The Galactic Council had ruled the known stars for 3,000 cycles. 7 species sat together in the Great Chamber aboard Council Station Eternal Light. They believed they knew everything about the galaxy. They believed nothing could surprise them anymore. They were wrong. High Counselor Verath stood at the center of the chamber. He was a tall creature with 6 legs and a hard shell covering his body. His compound eyes could see in many directions at once. He had led the council for 200 cycles and had never faced a true crisis. The galaxy was peaceful. The elder species had agreements. Trade flowed between worlds. War was a distant memory. The other counselors sat on raised platforms around him. Counselor Drea, of the Silvari Enclave, was made of living crystal. Her body glowed with soft colors that changed with her emotions. Counselor Sithrax, of the Velthari Empire, had green scales and sharp teeth. His people were warriors once, but now they were merchants. The others represented species just as old and just as confident in their place among the stars. Junior Analyst Torvik rushed into the chamber without warning. He was a small creature with wet skin and large eyes. His people, the Molari, were scientists and researchers. They rarely showed emotion. But Torvik was shaking as he approached the High Counselor. Verath demanded to know why Torvik had entered without permission. The young analyst held up a data tablet with trembling hands. He explained that sensors at the edge of Council space had detected something. An unknown vessel had entered the neutral expanse. The counselors grew quiet. The neutral expanse was a region of dead space. No species claimed it. No species traveled through it. Ancient wars had filled it with debris and radiation. There was nothing there worth visiting. Counselor Drea asked what kind of vessel. Her crystalline body pulsed with yellow light, showing her concern. Torvik checked his data again before answering. He said the vessel was large. Very large. And it was broadcasting a message on all frequencies in a language no one recognized. Verath ordered the message played for the chamber. Static filled the room first. Then a voice. The words were strange and unfamiliar. The translation systems worked quickly, finding patterns and building meaning from the sounds. The message was simple. The voice said they came in peace. They were explorers from a world called Earth. They represented something called the United Human Coalition. They sought contact with other intelligent life. Sithrax laughed, a harsh sound from his reptilian throat. He said it was probably a lost colony ship from some forgotten species. Perhaps criminals or exiles using old technology. The neutral expanse attracted such things sometimes, but Torvik shook his head. He said the vessel's energy signature was unlike anything in the Council archives. The sensors could not even determine its full size because it was too far away. But early estimates suggested it was massive. Verath considered the situation carefully. Unknown vessels were rare, but not unheard of. The Council had protocols for such events. He ordered an observation fleet assembled. 12 ships from 3 species would investigate. They would determine if this vessel was a threat or simply a curiosity. Fleet Commander Sithik received the assignment within the hour. He was a Velthari officer with decades of experience. His scales were dark green, almost black, showing his age and rank. He commanded the heavy cruiser Striking Claw and had never lost a battle. Of course, he had never fought a real battle either. None of them had. Sithik gathered his fleet at the jump gate nearest the neutral expanse. 12 vessels in formation. Their weapons ready but not powered. He expected to find a primitive ship crewed by desperate beings. Perhaps they had stolen technology from a more advanced species. Perhaps they were refugees from some unknown disaster. Either way, he would handle them quickly and return to his normal duties. The fleet jumped through the gate and emerged in the darkness of the neutral expanse. Sensors swept the area, searching for the unknown vessel. It took several moments before they found it. And when they did, Sithik leaned forward in his command chair. The vessel was far away, barely visible on long-range sensors. But even at this distance, something seemed wrong about the readings. The ship appeared larger than any vessel Sithik had ever seen. He ordered his fleet to move closer, keeping weapons offline to show peaceful intent. As they approached, The readings became clearer. Sithik watched the numbers change on his display and felt his confidence begin to fade. The unknown vessel was not just large. It was enormous. Initial scans suggested a length of nearly 18 kilometers. Its mass readings indicated armor plating thicker than the walls of the council station itself. One of his officers asked if the readings could be wrong. Sithik wished they were. He ordered multiple sensor sweeps from different angles. Each sweep confirmed the same impossible truth. The vessel before them was the largest warship any of them had ever seen. The unknown ship continued broadcasting its peaceful message. The voice was calm and patient, repeating the same words over and over. They came from Earth. They sought contact. They meant no harm. Sithik opened a channel to Council Station Eternal Light. He reported what his sensors showed. He described the size of the vessel and the strength of its energy readings. He admitted that his fleet of 12 ships suddenly seemed very small. High Counselor Vareth received the report in silence. The other counselors watched him, waiting for guidance. Drea's crystal body had turned deep blue, a color that meant fear among her people. Even Sithrax had stopped making jokes. Vareth made a decision. He ordered Sithik to approach the unknown vessel slowly and offer an escort to Council Station. The aliens would be brought before the full council for formal contact. This was too important for a fleet commander to handle alone. Sithik acknowledged the order and felt relieved. He did not want responsibility for whatever happened next. He transmitted a message to the unknown ship, inviting them to follow his fleet to meet the Galactic Council. The response came quickly. A new voice spoke, deeper than the recorded message. The voice identified himself as Captain Daniel Hartley of the USS Goliath. He accepted the invitation and thanked them for the welcome. Sithik watched on his display as the massive vessel began to move. It turned slowly, its bulk filling his sensors with readings he could barely understand. The USS Goliath fell into formation behind his fleet, and together they moved toward the nearest jump gate. The journey to Council Station would take several hours. Sithik spent that time studying his sensors and feeling smaller with each passing moment. The galaxy had just changed, and he was not sure anyone was ready for what came next. Lieutenant Kira Novak stood at her station on the bridge of the USS Goliath. She was a tall woman with dark hair pulled back tight against her head. Her eyes moved across the displays in front of her, recording everything she saw. The alien vessels ahead of them were beautiful in their own way. Their designs were curved and elegant, covered in symbols she did not recognize. Captain Daniel Hartley sat in the command chair behind her. He was an older man with gray at his temples and lines on his face that told stories of difficult decisions. He had commanded the Goliath since its construction 5 years ago. He had trained for this moment his entire career. But nothing could truly prepare someone for first contact with alien life. Commander Eric Walsh stood beside the captain. He was the executive officer, second in command of the ship. His job was to handle the details so the captain could focus on the big picture. Right now, the big picture was very big indeed. Walsh reported that sensors had completed analysis of the alien escort fleet. 12 vessels, the largest measuring just over 2 kilometers in length. Their weapons systems appeared to use plasma-based technology, effective but not exceptional. Their defensive screens were standard energy barriers, strong against most attacks but nothing special. Hartley listened without expression. He had suspected as much. Humanity had spent decades watching the galaxy from the shadows, listening to communications and studying what they could from a distance. They had learned much about the species that called themselves the Galactic Council. They had learned that these species were old but not necessarily advanced. The Goliath was different. It represented everything humanity had learned and everything humanity had built. 18 kilometers of armor and weapons and technology that had never been tested in real combat. 8,000 crew members living and working inside its hull. Factories that could produce replacement parts. Gardens that grew food. Medical facilities that rivaled the best hospitals on Earth. Kira turned from her station and asked permission to speak freely. Hartley nodded. She said the alien vessels seemed nervous. Their formations kept shifting, and their communication frequencies were full of chatter. They were afraid of the Goliath. Hartley understood. He would be afraid too if a ship 3 times larger than anything he had ever seen suddenly appeared in his space. Fear was natural. Fear could also be dangerous. He ordered continued broadcast of peaceful messages. He wanted the aliens to hear human voices, calm and friendly. He wanted them to understand that the Goliath was not here to fight. The fleet reached the first jump gate after 3 hours. Kira watched with wonder as the massive ring activated. Energy swirled within its center, creating a doorway through space. The alien vessels passed through one by one, disappearing in flashes of light. The Goliath approached the gate slowly. Walsh reported that the gate was large enough for their ship, but barely. The ancients who built these gates had never imagined a vessel like the Goliath. They passed through the gate and emerged in a new star system. Kira felt her breath catch as she saw what waited on the other side. A massive gas giant filled the view screen, its bands of color swirling in endless storms. Orbiting that giant was a station larger than any human construction. Council Station Eternal Light was 6 kilometers across. Its surface was covered in lights and towers and docking platforms. Ships moved around it like insects around a hive. It was impressive, the work of species that had mastered space travel thousands of years before humans learned to make fire. But the Goliath was still larger. As they moved closer, Kira saw the station's lights reflecting off the hull of her ship. She saw the alien vessels scattering to make room for them. She saw observation platforms turning to watch their approach. Fleet Commander Sithik contacted them and provided docking coordinates. His voice sounded strained, his words carefully chosen. He explained that the Goliath could not dock directly with the station due to its size. Instead, they would hold position nearby, and smaller shuttles would transport the human delegation to meet the council. Hartley accepted the arrangement without argument. He had expected as much. The Goliath was too large to fit inside any docking bay. Its presence alone was enough to make a statement. Walsh began preparations for the diplomatic mission. He selected crew members for the delegation and reviewed security protocols. Dr. Samantha Green would lead the diplomatic team. She had spent 20 years studying theoretical xenodiplomacy, preparing for a moment everyone hoped would come but no one was certain ever would. Sergeant Marcus Cole would lead the security detail. He was a large man with a shaved head and eyes that missed nothing. His job was to protect the delegation without appearing threatening. It was a difficult balance. But Cole was good at difficult things. Kira watched the preparations from her station. She had not been selected for the delegation. Her job was to remain on the bridge and continue gathering data about the aliens. She felt disappointed but understood the reasoning. Scientists would have their turn later. Right now, they needed diplomats and soldiers. Hartley called a senior staff meeting before the delegation departed. They gathered in the conference room adjacent to the bridge, a space with windows that looked out at the alien station. The view reminded them all of what was at stake. The captain spoke plainly. He said they had achieved something remarkable. They had traveled to the stars and found intelligent life. Now they had to convince that life that humanity was worth knowing. They had to show strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance. Dr. Green nodded in agreement. She said the aliens were clearly afraid. Their body language and communications all showed signs of distress. They had expected to find primitives, and instead they found equals. That kind of surprise could lead to many reactions. Not all of them good. Cole asked about rules of engagement if things went wrong. Hartley was quiet for a moment before answering. He said their weapons would remain powered, but not active. They would defend themselves if attacked, but would not fire first under any circumstances. Humanity's first act among the stars would not be an act of war. The meeting ended, and the delegation prepared to depart. A shuttle carried them from the Goliath's main hangar bay toward the alien station. Kira watched from the bridge as the small vessel crossed the distance, carrying human hopes and human fears to a place where no human had ever been. Behind her, the Goliath waited in silence. Its weapons dormant, its shields active, its crew watching from thousands of stations throughout the ship. They had come so far, built so much, sacrificed so many years of preparation for this moment. The shuttle reached the station and disappeared inside a hangar bay. Contact was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. High Counselor Verath had not slept since the unknown vessel appeared on their sensors. He stood in his private chambers aboard Council Station Eternal Light, staring out a window at the massive human ship. The USS Goliath hung in space like a sleeping predator, its dark hull reflecting the light of distant stars. He had read every report his analysts could produce. The human vessel carried weapons capable of destroying the entire station with a single sustained attack. Its armor was layered in patterns that suggested multiple redundant systems. Its power signature indicated energy reserves that dwarfed anything in the Council fleet. And yet, the humans claimed they came in peace. Verath had lived long enough to know that words and actions did not always match. Species said many things when they wanted something. The question was what the humans wanted, and what they were willing to do to get it. Counselor Drea entered his chambers without announcement. Her crystalline body pulsed with deep purple light, a color that indicated serious concern among her people. She said the human shuttle had docked, and the delegation was being escorted to the council chamber. She asked if he was ready. Verath turned from the window and straightened his robes. He said he would be ready when he understood what they were facing. Until then, he would listen and learn. They walked together through the corridors of the station. Other species moved aside as they passed, bowing or nodding in respect. The station was home to thousands of beings from dozens of worlds. All of them had heard about the human ship. All of them were afraid. The council chamber was already full when they arrived. Representatives from all 7 elder species sat on their platforms. Their aides and advisors clustered behind them. Guards stood at every entrance. Though Verath knew they would be useless if the humans decided to attack. A door opened on the far side of the chamber, and the human delegation entered. Verath studied them carefully as they approached. They were strange creatures, walking upright on 2 legs with 2 arms hanging at their sides. Their skin came in different shades. Their hair in different colors. They wore matching uniforms of dark blue with symbols on their chests. The leader was an older male with gray in his hair. He walked with confidence, his eyes moving across the chamber and taking in everything. Behind him came a female with kind eyes and steady hands. She carried a data tablet and moved with purpose. 4 larger humans in heavier armor followed, their faces alert but not aggressive. Captain Daniel Hartley stopped at the center of the chamber and looked up at High Counselor Verath. The translation devices activated, allowing them to understand each other despite the vast differences in their languages. Verath spoke first, welcoming the humans to Council Station Eternal Light. He said they had traveled far and accomplished something remarkable. The council was curious to learn more about them and their intentions. Hartley thanked him for the welcome. His voice was calm and measured, the voice of someone who chose words carefully. He explained that humanity had known about the Galactic Council for decades. They had watched and listened from their home system, learning about the species that ruled the stars. This revelation caused murmurs throughout the chamber. Counselor Sithrax leaned forward, his scales rippling with agitation. He demanded to know how long the humans had been spying on them and why they had waited so long to reveal themselves. Dr. Samantha Green stepped forward to answer. She explained that humanity had a difficult history. Their world had known many wars, many disasters, many moments when survival seemed impossible. They had learned to be cautious, to prepare before acting. They had watched the council not out of hostility but out of a desire to understand what they might encounter. Drea asked why they had built such a powerful warship if their intentions were peaceful. Her colors shifted to questioning yellow as she spoke. Surely peaceful explorers did not need weapons capable of destroying stations, Hartley answered directly. He said humanity had learned through suffering that peace required strength. The weak were conquered. The strong could choose peace, because no one could force them into war. The Goliath was not built to attack. It was built to ensure that humanity could defend itself if attacked. The chamber fell silent. Verath felt the truth in those words, even if he did not want to accept it. The humans had not come to conquer. They had come to ensure they could not be conquered. There was a difference, though it was a small one. Counselor Morthix of the Gothanai Consortium spoke for the first time. He was an old being, his fur gray with age, and his eyes clouded with experience. He asked what the humans wanted from the council. Trade, territory, alliance? What did they seek? Green smiled, a gesture that showed her teeth but somehow communicated warmth rather than threat. She said humanity sought friendship. They wanted to share knowledge and culture. They wanted to trade goods and ideas. They wanted to take their place among the stars as equals, not as subjects or masters. Equals. The word hung in the air like smoke after a fire. The council had never considered any species their equal. The 7 elder races had ruled for millennia. Younger species joined as members, but they always understood their place in the hierarchy. The humans did not seem interested in hierarchy. They stood before the most powerful organization in the galaxy and spoke of equality as if it were obvious. As if anything else would be insulting. Varath understood something in that moment. The humans were not asking permission to be equals. They were stating a fact. Their ship, their technology, their quiet confidence, all said the same thing. They could not be forced into submission, so any relationship would have to be built on mutual respect. He made a decision. He announced that the council would need time to discuss this matter privately. The humans would be given quarters on the station while deliberations took place. He hoped they would be patient. Hartley nodded in acceptance. He said humanity had waited decades to make contact. They could wait a few more days for an answer. The guards escorted the human delegation out of the chamber. As they left, Varath noticed that Sergeant Cole turned back for just a moment. The big human's eyes swept the room one more time, noting every guard, every exit, every potential threat. Then he was gone, and the council was left alone with their fear. The council deliberations lasted 3 days. During that time, the human delegation remained in their assigned quarters, a suite of rooms designed for visiting dignitaries. The rooms were comfortable but not luxurious, decorated with artwork from various council species. Dr. Samantha Green spent her time reviewing everything they had learned about council politics. She studied the relationships between species, the old conflicts and new alliances, the power structures that held the organization together. Knowledge was her weapon, and she intended to use it well. Captain Hartley communicated regularly with the Goliath through secure channels. Lieutenant Novak reported that alien vessels had been approaching their ship for sensor sweeps. The aliens were studying them, trying to understand their technology. Hartley ordered Novak to allow the scans but to keep their most sensitive systems shielded. Commander Walsh had taken to walking the station corridors during the permitted hours. Alien guards followed him everywhere, but they kept their distance. Walsh observed everything he could about the station's layout, its defenses, its population. He noted that most species seemed afraid of humans. They stepped aside when he passed, avoiding eye contact, but some were curious. A young Molari researcher approached Walsh on the second day, asking questions about human physiology. Walsh answered honestly, explaining how humans breathed and ate and moved. The researcher seemed fascinated by the simplicity of human biology compared to some other species. Sergeant Cole maintained security for the delegation at all times. He and his team worked in shifts, ensuring someone was always watching. The aliens had been polite so far, but Cole had not survived his career by trusting politeness. He slept lightly and kept his weapon within reach. On the third day, an invitation arrived. High Counselor Varath requested a private meeting with Captain Hartley and Dr. Green. No guards, no aides. Just 3 beings talking honestly. Hartley accepted the invitation without hesitation. Cole objected, arguing that the captain should not go anywhere without protection. But Hartley overruled him. This was a gesture of trust, and refusing it would send the wrong message. The meeting took place in a small chamber overlooking the gas giant below. Varath stood by the window when they arrived, his compound eyes watching the endless storms that swirled across the planet's surface. He turned as they entered and gestured for them to sit. He spoke without ceremony. He said the council was divided about how to respond to humanity's arrival. Some counselors wanted immediate alliance, hoping to benefit from human technology. Others wanted restrictions, fearing what humans might do with their power. A few wanted to treat the Goliath as a threat and respond accordingly. Hartley asked what Varath himself thought. The High Counselor was silent for a long moment before answering. He said he was old enough to remember when the Council was not so peaceful. He remembered wars between species, conflicts that destroyed worlds and killed billions. The Council had worked hard to move beyond that past. He said the arrival of a species as powerful as humanity raised difficult questions. How could the Council maintain balance when one species could challenge all the others combined? How could they build trust with beings they did not understand? Green responded carefully. She acknowledged the difficulty of the situation. She said humanity had the same fears when they began watching the galaxy. They saw an organization of powerful species and wondered if there was room for them. They built the Goliath not to dominate but to have a voice that could not be ignored. She said, humans understood that trust took time to build. They were willing to be patient. They would accept whatever terms the Council offered as a starting point. As long as those terms respected human dignity. Vareth turned back to the window. He asked what dignity meant to humans. It was a philosophical question, perhaps. But he needed to understand. Hartley stood and joined him at the window. He looked out at the vast planet below and thought carefully before speaking. He said dignity meant being treated as something more than a resource to be used. It meant having the right to make decisions about your own future. It meant being seen as a thinking, feeling being worthy of respect. He said humanity had learned about dignity through its absence. Their history was full of moments when some humans denied dignity to others. Slavery, conquest, oppression. They had made terrible mistakes and paid terrible prices. Now they tried to do better. Varath understood. His own species had a similar history, though few remembered it anymore. The past was full of shame, but the future could be different. He made an offer. The Council would recognize humanity as an observer species with limited rights. They could trade with Council members who agreed. They could travel through Council space with permission. Full membership would be considered after a period of observation, perhaps 50 cycles. It was a cautious offer, the minimum the Council could provide while still acknowledging humanity's power. Hartley could have demanded more. The Goliath gave him leverage that no other species possessed, but he did not demand. He accepted the offer with genuine gratitude. He said humanity did not expect to be trusted immediately. They would prove themselves through actions over time. Green added that they would send ambassadors and scholars, scientists and artists. They would share what they knew and learn what the Council could teach. They would be good neighbors, even if they were not yet family. Varath felt something shift in his understanding of these strange beings. They had come in a ship capable of destruction beyond imagination. Yet they spoke of patience and trust. They could have demanded equality by force, yet they accepted a lower position while working toward something better. Perhaps they were dangerous. Perhaps one day humanity would turn its power against the galaxy. But Vareth had lived long enough to know that fear alone was no foundation for peace. Sometimes you had to take risks. He extended his hand in the human gesture he had researched. Hartley took it, and they shook once, a simple movement that sealed an agreement between species separated by thousands of light years, but connected by hope for something better. The private meeting ended, but its effects would ripple through the galaxy for generations to come. The formal ceremony took place on the 7th day. The council chamber was filled with representatives from every species, all watching as High Counselor Varath read the terms of the treaty aloud. Humanity would be recognized as an observer species, trade agreements would be negotiated, cultural exchange would begin. A new chapter in galactic history was opening. Captain Daniel Hartley stood at the center of the chamber with his delegation around him. He listened to the terms and nodded his acceptance. His signature appeared on the digital document alongside Varath's mark, making the agreement official. The chamber erupted in careful applause, a mixture of sounds from different species expressing approval in different ways. Some counselors seemed relieved that the crisis had passed peacefully. Others still looked worried, their eyes drifting toward the viewports where the Goliath remained visible in the distance. After the ceremony, the human delegation was allowed to move freely through the station. Lieutenant Novak finally received permission to join them, shuttling over from the Goliath with a team of scientists. She spent hours talking with Molari researchers, exchanging theories about physics and stellar navigation. The Molari were shocked to learn that humanity had developed faster than light travel independently. The Council species all used the ancient jump gate network, built by a civilization that had vanished long before any current species achieved spaceflight. The idea of building your own method of crossing the stars had never occurred to them. Novak explained that humans had no choice. They had discovered the jump gates but could not reach them with conventional engines, so they invented new engines, pushing the boundaries of physics until they found another way. It took decades of work and countless failures, but eventually they succeeded. The Molari researcher who had first approached Commander Walsh now followed Novak everywhere, asking endless questions. His name was Torvik, the same analyst who had first detected the Goliath. He had requested assignment to the Human Cultural Exchange Program and had been accepted. Walsh continued his observations of the station's military capabilities. He reported his findings to Captain Hartley in private briefings each evening. The Council forces were substantial, but outdated. Their weapons had not been significantly upgraded in centuries. Their tactics relied on numbers rather than innovation. Hartley filed these reports without comment. He did not intend to use them for conquest. But knowledge was valuable, and humanity needed to understand the galaxy they were entering. Dr. Green held meetings with representatives from each Council species. She learned about their histories, their values, their hopes for the future. She discovered that beneath the surface unity, the Council was full of tensions. Old rivalries simmered. Economic conflicts created friction. The appearance of peace masked complex negotiations and careful balances. She understood that humanity's arrival had disrupted those balances. Some species saw opportunity in befriending the newcomers. Others saw threats to their position. The galaxy would be adjusting to human presence for a long time. Sergeant Cole found himself in an unexpected situation on the 5th day. A young Velthari officer challenged him to a sparring match. Curious about human combat abilities, Cole accepted, and they fought with training weapons in a gymnasium on the station. The Velthari was fast and skilled, his scales providing natural armor. Cole was stronger and more adaptable, adjusting his style as the match continued. They fought for 20 minutes before calling it a draw, both breathing heavily but smiling. The Velthari said humans were worthy opponents. Cole said the same about the Velthari. They shared a meal afterward, talking about their training and their careers. Friendship was beginning in small ways, one person at a time. On the 8th day, Captain Hartley announced that the Goliath would depart. They had accomplished what they came to do. Now, they needed to return home and report their success. The departure ceremony was smaller than the treaty signing but somehow more meaningful. High Counselor Verath personally came to the shuttle bay to see them off. He stood before Hartley and spoke words that the translation devices carried clearly. He said the galaxy had grown larger with humanity's arrival. The Council would need time to adjust, to understand what this meant for the future. He hoped that future would be built on cooperation rather than conflict. Hartley responded that humanity shared that hope. They had not crossed the vast distances of space to find enemies. They had come looking for neighbors, perhaps even friends. They would work hard to prove worthy of the trust the Council had shown. The delegation boarded their shuttle and departed for the Goliath. Novak watched through the viewport as the station grew smaller behind them. She felt changed by what she had experienced. The galaxy was no longer an abstract concept but a real place filled with real beings. Walsh sat beside her, his face thoughtful. He said the Council did not know what to make of them. They had expected primitives, and found something else entirely. It would take years for them to adjust. Novak asked if that worried him. He shook his head slowly. He said change was always difficult, but it was also necessary. The galaxy had been static for too long. Maybe humanity was exactly what it needed. The shuttle docked with the Goliath, and the crew returned to their stations. Captain Hartley took his command chair and ordered departure. The massive vessel turned slowly, its engines humming with power as it moved away from Council Station Eternal Light. Behind them, the station's lights twinkled like stars against the backdrop of the gas giant. Thousands of beings watched from observation decks and viewports, seeing the human ship leave but knowing it would return. Counselor Drea stood at her favorite observation point, her crystalline body pulsing with colors no human had learned to read. She watched the Goliath grow smaller and thought about what came next. The humans were patient and careful, strong but not aggressive. They might be exactly what they claimed to be, or they might be something else entirely. Only time would tell. High Counselor Verath returned to his chambers and began drafting messages to every species in the council. The official announcements would go out within hours, informing the galaxy of humanity's existence. Reactions would vary. Some would celebrate. Some would panic. All would wonder. A new power had risen among the stars. They called themselves human, and they had arrived in a ship that made the greatest vessels of the council look like toys. They spoke of peace and friendship, of equality and respect. The Galactic Council would be watching them very carefully. And somewhere in the void between stars, the USS Goliath carried its crew home, knowing that their journey was only beginning. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in millennia, the future was uncertain. But uncertainty, the humans knew, was where opportunity lived. They were ready for whatever came next.